Seneca says every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mindful Living podcast with me, your host Sana, as always. Now, today for this episode, we are going straight into a season that a lot of us avoid talking about: the death of a vision, the end of an environment, the end of a season. That strange turning of the chapter where your old life does not fit anymore and the new one is not clear yet. Maybe you have left a job that once felt like a calling. Maybe a relationship or community ended and you feel like you left a version of yourself behind with it. Maybe the dream you carried for 10 or 20 years just did not happen. And now you're asking, so who am I without that dream? Listeners, my guest today lives right in the middle of that tension. He grew up with a deep curiosity about the unseen side of life, fascinated by dreams and spirituality and how history and culture shape the way we search for meaning. And that curiosity, listeners, it took him from New Age festivals to Bible colleges, from government dignitaries to leadership circles and international radio. For more than 20 years, he has spoken to thousands across the globe with one mission: help people discover their true design and actually walk in it with confidence. Well, he has built two businesses, interpreted thousands of dreams, sat across from leaders, skeptics, believers, and seekers who are all hungry for clarity and breakthrough. And listeners, you know what I love about his style is that it's not fluffy. He tells with truth, with humor. He connects the dots across history and culture. He brings spiritual principles down to earth so people can use them in real life. So today we are unpacking: how do you navigate the death of a vision, the end of an environment, the turning of a chapter, not in theory, in real life, in your body, in your relationships, in your faith and your doubts. So, friend, if you are listening to this in a season where everything you built feels like it is falling apart, trust me, you are not broken. You are in transition. And this conversation is for you. So, listeners, please welcome my incredible guest, Caleb Matthews. Caleb, welcome to the Mindful Living. And as always, it is really a joy to have you here.
It's a joy to be here, Sana. Thank you very much for having me as a guest and the warm introduction to the show. And as always, I'm looking forward to our in-depth conversation. There are always such good ones. I enjoy speaking with you as one of my favorite podcast hostesses. Thank you for having me to the Mindful Living show.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Thank you so much. That was really a warm beginning to this conversation. So, Caleb, to begin with, 20 years. You have devoted 20 years helping people find their true design. So, um, I want to go right into this because, can you tell us about a time, when a vision you were sure was from God or from the Creator, it died, maybe not faded, but it actually died. Like, what ended, and what did that look like in your day to day life?
Hmm, that's a good question. In order to be able to share the message, one should be sharing from part of their life of the message, and for that, I do want to go back into my transition from my first start into public speaking in Africa about 20 years ago. When I was a teenager, 18 years old, I did a lot of visionary trips, missionary trips to Africa and the Philippines and different places in the world. And I did about 6 journeys to East Africa, as well as 3 to the Philippines, multiple to different countries. And I enjoyed it. I was in my element. I was in my groove. I was being able to use really one of the main giftings, I believe, that the creator, that God has given me on the earth. And a time came where I transitioned to the corporate world, to big corp. And I worked in the corporate world in sales for 10 years in a specific industry. And I was good at it, but it wasn't my main. design. It wasn't my main reason for getting up. It was just, I felt like it was just a stop along the journey. And I was still doing some of the public speaking, some of the helping people reach a design, doing, of course, some dream interpretation analysis and consulting, but I wasn't doing as much of the speaking and motivating, inspiring as I wish I could be doing. And for that season, that 10, 11-year season, it was really a death of a vision of being in that element like every day, full time, and instead of being in that, I was having to get up to go to work to serve somebody else's vision, to be another cog in the wheel of the big corp world. And finally, after being very successful after 10 or 11 years, I felt the strong call from God. Those sea links in my life began to unravel and manifest in front of me. It really made it clear that I was on borrowed time in the corporate world and I needed to pivot and transition again. But in that in between time, between knowing I needed to pull out and having the opportunity to pull out and being in that, even though I was good at sales, I felt like it was a death of a vision of going from traveling around the world as a young man with my family to being in an office for 40 hours a week and not doing that full time. And that to me felt like death, but of a vision. But in order for a vision to be able to grow, and in order for anything to be able to grow, a seed must go into the ground and die to produce fruit. And this is the principle that Jesus taught in the scriptures. And I want to encourage your audience right now as we get along in this conversation, just to begin with, that unless a dream or a vision or a goal or something you want to see come to life it could truly live, it needs to go into the ground as a seed and die first. And part of that process in life is embracing the death of the vision before new life can come into another door again, right?
Wow. I mean, um, it is, because while reading the introduction, something that really kind of, I mean, inner voice kind of said to me, yeah, this has happened to you as well, Sana. This has happened to you. I mean, I was in a role or in a job where I felt like, this is such an important part of my identity, this is what that defines me. But then when it kind of, slips away from you, or maybe that kind of, because I was affected by the layoffs. So I felt like something within me has died. I was lamenting, I was feeling as if, I'm no one without it. So for you, those 10, 11 years, I mean, it is, it's like this long winter that you had to go through. And I also think that, something that we can also seek inspiration from nature is, before creation of something beautiful and spectacular, there's some level of destruction that happens. That is like the, beginning of an end. And then it kind of is a new path towards a beautiful beginning, towards a beautiful form of nature. So it really, really makes a lot of sense here. I mean, the grief is real, the disappointment is real, the tears, they are real. And yet inside, we have this quite question that if this died, does that mean my design died with it? Or is it just the container gone and the calling is still intact? The calling is still there.
Indeed, I like how you said that the container is still intact, the calling's still there, but it just looks like a different container, a different door. And that is what we're speaking about right now. Me and you, Sana, and our audience listening, that is many and all of us are at one point or another been in that same place and going through transition, because that's really what life is all about on this journey on this planet is these seasons. The four seasons we look at: spring, summer, autumn, and fall, to use them as a metaphor. Human beings look all around us. Sometimes somebody's in their spring, some's in their season, some are in their fall, some are in their winter. But in the winter, since we're speaking about that winter and that death before life again, there's a phrase that has come impressed upon my heart over the last year, especially, and that is finding joy in the desert. And part of finding joy and oasis in the desert is accepting the fact that, okay, this is the season where I am. This is the season where a vision I have is. But to be okay with the fact that, okay, this is the desert, and not to fight it, because sometimes we try to fight a door open that is not supposed to open. Sometimes we try to fight to close a door that's not supposed to close. And when we accept the fact that, okay, this is where I've been placed by God, this is where I'm supposed to thrive, even if I feel like in my soul that this is not the place for me. Sometimes our soul doesn't understand fully what our spirit does, and that is, even if the circumstances around us don't look like they are fit, this is the fit. And I want to emphasize this strongly, really get this across, that closed doors are not punishment, but they're invitations to accelerate and uplift our DNA of design. And for me in my corporate world years, I have to echo exactly what you said, Sana, about that these containers just they shift. And if I hadn't have gone through those 10 or 11 years in the corporate world, I wouldn't be able to speak really with experience or authority to those who are in that similar place. And for me, I'm very, very glad that I went through it, because it's helped hone and sculpt and tone another element of really my message.
Absolutely. I so much second that, Caleb, because yes, in your journey, maybe there would be people who have wronged you, systems would have wronged you, situations would have wronged you. But then at the same time, when I look back or I do a bit of, self introspection here, I think that those bad times actually helped me understand the value of good times. um they helped me understand, maybe my shortcomings or my drawbacks and work on them, learn from them, and also realize that, not everything is in my control. In
Y-
some places, some situations, I have to surrender. I just have to put efforts and maybe leave the outcome of it to the universe.
Mm, mm. Yeah, surrender. That's that's a tough one within the human construct, isn't it? Yeah, because we want to control everything. We want to be the commander of the ship. We want to be able to navigate and have everything lined up, and that's a construct that especially the Western world echoes. I think out there in the East, as far as where the places I've traveled, but I'm going to be confident in saying I haven't been to India, but what I know from encountering and interacting with the beautiful people of India, such as yourself, Sana, is that there's more of a healthy respect for surrender. And I think in especially, I know no country is perfect, but in the Western world, in social media across the planet, we are programmed, we are taught a construct of that if you're not in control, then there's something wrong with you. That if you don't have control of the ship, if you don't have control of your life, you have control of your relationships, you have control of your business, you don't have control of every second, every minute. If you don't have complete control, then there's something wrong with you. And I would counter with saying, if you think that everything is supposed to be in your control, then I think that you need to do a reassessment of your spirit, soul, and body, of your SSB method, of your DNA of design, because I do not believe that God created us in his image to have everything within our control. Because where is the mystery in that? Where is the door of opportunity for God to be able to work and influence in our life in a way that's beyond our control, that's mysterious and wonderful and glorious, and where the honor and the full credit doesn't go to us, but it goes to the creator, it goes to God, it goes with that mystery that happens. But surrender is part of that. And I believe in this principle in my life. And that is, I do within my imperfections every single day, I attempt and I reach and I strive for this place in my spirit to say, God, I am a free agent to the purposes of the Spirit in my life, to the purposes of surrendering and yielding my life, because all of this doesn't belong. It's just these are just resources along the way. In my opinion, people might have a different perspective, but my bank account, my jobs, my car, my resources, my equity, my relationships. These are all tools and these are all beautiful things that God has given me in my life, but they don't completely to belong to me forever. Like eventually I will have to surrender them when I leave this earthly avatar and my life is complete. So when we yield control and surrender is a huge thing, when we surrender the fact that our lives and every day and every moment is a gift, then I believe that life becomes easier. And I know that's a paradox. But when we surrender and we say that everything is not in my control, then I believe that life becomes easier because then we don't become the Messiah because there's already been a Messiah already came. That job's already been taken. That role's already been taken. But when we don't believe we have to be the one that is the savior of the world and saves everything and redeems everything and also is somebody to take control of everything, then the burden is lifted off our shoulders. And I believe somebody listening to this podcast right now, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, Santa. Someone listening to this podcast, when they're tuning into this podcast, needs to hear this that you do not have to take everything on your shoulders. Everything was not meant to be on your shoulders. The whole responsibility of the family is not meant to be on your shoulders. It's not meant to be on your shoulders. I just wanted to emphasize that.
I absolutely, I mean, so much I can relate with that because there are times where I really feel that, if there was some kind of magic wand in my hand and I could, make everything simple for me and for everyone else also, especially my family, because I just don't want to face this every day. And it really kind of, it eats you up from within. I mean, it manifests within you like physically as well. You feel like this heaviness, maybe your heart racing or maybe sweaty or kind of in this that I'm going into the darkness. But then at the same time, what you said, Caleb, is I absolutely can relate it with, because then I think manner voice says, okay, do whatever you can, but then not everything you cannot change, or you cannot, just don't take up everything on your shoulders, because if you are not there, what is the point? What is the meaning of all this? And that is something that I have personally learned, and I'm still learning. I'm still learning over time through different experiences. I mean, my subconscious is registering right now these things. And I also believe that, there's this another side here um, that, people would say, okay, this is fine. Although it makes a lot of sense, but then at the same time, I think we also have a kind of accountability to some situations, where things can be in our control, but then, because I don't want listeners to realize or to, just have one single perspective here. This is a very nuanced take, because people would say that, if God is good and intentional, why does it feel like, that, why is it allowing me to be sure, invested, and then, let everything fall apart? So I think that is something many people would kind of, think about it. That maybe through all the spiritual, perspective, it is getting me tricked, not guided. So I also want to know your opinion on this. Can this be interpreted in a different way?
Hmm. Yes. Well, I think part of multiple perspective advantage, this is the terminology that I often echo when we're talking about looking at life through different lenses, that it's important to see the playing field of our lives from these multiple perspectives, like an onion. We peel layers of an onion, right? And I fully encourage our audience to do their due diligence to search for the truth, because I think one of the greatest journeys in life is searching for what is truth. It was one of the most famous questions ever asked in history and the Bible, Pontius Pilate to Jesus, what is truth? And looking for truth, that part of this journey of truth, part of walking out our DNA and design and purpose on the earth is this whole concept and this experience of being built up and being torn down. And our human mind can erase, at least mine does, every single day of thinking, okay, God, one moment I feel like you're building me up, and the other moment I feel like you're tearing me down. This is just my experience I'm speaking from. But in that context, I wanna say this, and that is, let's just audience think about an artist that is like Picasso or Michelangelo or any of these famous artists that created art in history, the one who created the Mona Lisa. You could go to the Louvre in Paris and see all these amazing pieces of art that artists created that are worth a lot of money. But these artists, these famous artists, they all started in the workshop. And in the workshop, they had to create paintings. And then suddenly one day they would come to say, no, I don't like this. I'm gonna paint over this, or I'm gonna tear this easel down, and I'm gonna put another easel up and start again. We've all seen those cartoons or those movies where you have the artist that's working furiously, and all of a sudden they're like, no, I don't like this. I'm gonna paint over top of this. Oh no, I'm gonna tear this across. I'm gonna start again. And I would just challenge your audience, anyone who's skeptical or anyone's like, okay, I don't believe God can build up and tear down. I would challenge you with this respectfully. Look at the artists in history. If anybody created anything that was worthwhile, and I would pose this question, was their piece of art something that was just built up and didn't have to be torn down multiple times before it was built up? And that is a question that I pose to every person in this way who's listening to this. Your life, if everything was just rosy, everything was just fine, everything was just built up by God, and you didn't have seasons of winter in your life where you were torn down inside, would that be for your benefit or not?
That's $1 million question, Caleb. Not even $1 million. It's priceless. It's priceless. I think you know that's what genuinely, you know everyone would seek answers for. And I also believe, Caleb, that there is something called as intuition. We often uh like conventionally people think that intuition is something that is very it's a soft skill. It doesn't hold its value in the harsh reality of this world. But something that I also learned through the journey of my podcasting is that intuition, it's there. It's already there within you. Maybe it's kind of, it can be interpreted in different meanings, but I strongly believe that it's this voice of the higher power or the God speaking through you, your inner voice, your higher self. And sometimes we really kind of tend to ignore that intuition.
Mm, yes, we can block it out. We can block it out because we've been taught, whether that be by culture or peer pressure around us or even our own mindset, that, oh, well, intuition is just, it's a nice thing. I can have that like in my own sanctuary of my own meditation. But out there in the real world, intuition can't possibly help me, can it? Well, it can. I'm here to say, audience, that it can. How do we know this? Well, let's look back to history, because I'm going to take us back to history here for one of my examples here. I love what talking about history is a subject at
Mhm.
school that I that I just had no problem with. And there is a famous navigator. He lived in the 1700s, 1800s, I think late 1700s, called Sir Francis Drake. You may have heard the name Sasana, but our audience, Sir Francis Drake, and he circum navigated many parts of the globe, especially from Europe to the New World. And he wrote a poem. He wrote a poem about intuition, where intuition meets reality, it meets the obstacles, and that's called "Disturb Us, O God." It's one of the great poems. I highly recommend anyone in our audience to read it, listen to it on YouTube, whatever afterwards. But a little bit of the excerpt goes something like this: "Disturb us, O God, when we have sailed too close to the shore. Disturb us, O God, when we have lost our thirst for the waters of life and having fallen in love with life, we have ceased to dream of eternity. In our efforts to build a new earth, we have caused our efforts to build a new heaven to dim. Disturb us, O God, where storms that we encounter will show your mastery. We're losing sight of land. We shall find the stars. Push back the horizons of our hopes and lead us into the future on hope, faith, and love. And that's a little bit of the excerpt from that poem, Disturb Us, O God, but it speaks of a prayer of asking God for intuition and insight within the spirit to encounter obstacles. Because who more than a navigator that faced the storms and faced hardships than Sir Francis Drake to speak in these things? But I would just encourage our audience, just even in these closing moments here, to just introspect and ask God in your own way, in your own language, to disturb you in the healthy way, and that is to just intercept your life. You may feel like your life is being thrown off course, off navigation, and the storms are so overwhelming, and the obstacles, and you're like, okay, how does my intuition work into all this? But ask God to disturb your life in the healthiest way possible, to razor sharp, laser focus your focus on the DNA of your design, your unique purpose on the earth. There's a scripture verse in Psalms where David says, "Lift up your head, O you gates, be lifted up, you everlasting doors, that the King of glory may come in." Well, that's his prayer to God, asking for his spiritual gates, his spiritual senses, his intuition to lift up their eyes. And that's David speaking from his spirit to his soul and asking the great spirit, the Holy Spirit, the spirit of the creator of the earth, to lift up his head, O ye gates. And I would encourage you to pray that same prayer, if you're comfortable, audience, in your own way, that your gates would be lifted up in your life to see the bigger purpose, the multiple perspective advantage.
It's beautiful, Caleb. That's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful. It's calming, and it brings us into the present. And that's exactly, you know, I would say mindfulness is. Before we conclude, Caleb, it's I mean, as a ritual, of course, if our listeners, um, they would further like to connect with you, share their thoughts and opinions about this conversation, seek more wisdom about this, what would be the easiest way?
I would say YouTube, my channel on www.youtube.com/at the Seelink. So the at sign, the, and then SEELINK. So my YouTube channel, at the Seelink. I post motivational weekly content there, videos, shorts, long video form, as well as just my adventures, and really encouraging you to be able to see the links in your day by day and your night season and the dreams season as well, and seeing those links. I'd love to hear your thoughts, love for you to be a subscriber, audience. Tune in, subscribe for more free motivational content. And then my website, www.calebmatthews.net. I have, of course, some of my finest YouTube videos there, podcast like this one. Whenever I get them uploaded to my website, I always like to feature podcast hosts, hostesses like Sana, the podcast like Mindful Living, so that audiences can be aware of where I've spoken. And then I've got content on there, on my Instagram page. I'm Caleb on the Runway. Shout out to my modeling years on there. And then my Twitter account, Caleb Matthews without the E. But that's where the audience can tune in and find more about me. But I encourage you to follow my YouTube channel and also to follow me on my website. Audience, love to hear your thoughts, love to hear about the sea links in your journey, and the door and your experiences, your journeys through even listening to this podcast today, of what doors felt like a death of a vision or a closed season, and how has that led to where you are right now and what you're leading to. Love to hear your thoughts and interact with you and converse with you. But that's where the audience can tune in about me. But thank you, Sana. This has been so refreshing. You are a breath of fresh air, and really just a lighthouse of hope and life and sustenance and substance for people. Thank you, Sana.
I'm really, really honored, and thank you so much, Caleb. And Listeners, as I always do, I'll have all the links in the show notes. So um, please reach out, connect with Caleb, check out his YouTube channel, check out all the resources, the wonderful wisdom that he's sharing. And all I would say before we close this conversation is, listener, if you are in a season of death of a vision, you are not a failure. You are not behind. You're not less spiritual because you're tired and confused. You are in a transition that most people go through in silence. And your job right now is not to impress anyone with how together you look. Your job is to stay honest to yourself, stay connected, and take the next small aligned step. So if this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who is also in a chapter shift. Leave a review, let us know what connected with you, what didn't, and that helps more people find these conversations. And if you found value in this, show us your love, subscribe to us, and until next time, you are listening to the Mindful Living Podcast, and this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you so much, listeners, for trusting us with your story and your season. Thank you.